Today we're going to talk about alumni relationships and using our digital channels to develop those relationships that make all other forms of solicitations more successful. So how can we use our website and our e-communications plans to develop meaningful alumni relationships so that no matter what type of solicitation arrives, whether it is a digital solicitation or whether it is a phone-a-thon caller or maybe it's a direct mail piece that arrives, how do we develop relationships that then make all other forms of solicitation more successful? So thank you for joining us today. We hope you get a lot out of this, and we'll jump right into it. As Emma mentioned, my name is Kevin Bauman. I'm the Director of Philanthropic Initiatives here at Capture. And what you're going to see today is data that's gathered and messaging that is delivered through the website. So as we talk about digital communications, know that oftentimes we're talking about the website, your e-communication plans, and even into social media strategies, because those digital communications scale so well compared to our other solicitation channels. So there's no postage required as we update our communications in the digital space. There is certainly no phone-a-thon aspect of updating things in the digital space. And so the digital space provides unique opportunities for institutions to update content in real time, deliver targeted messaging to alumni in real time, and deliver meaningful communications. And maybe that's to alumni, maybe that's to friends, parents, grandparents, students. All of those visitors are visiting an institution's digital channels throughout the year. And it's monitoring their behaviors on those digital channels that allows us to better understand who has a relationship, what that relationship looks like, and how we can further that relationship in a meaningful way. So why the website and why digital? You know, we talked a little bit about how digital communications scale in a way that most other communications don't scale. But in large part, alumni are choosing a relationship with the institution online. So convenience, we know everyone is busy, and you can use yourself as an example. There's just generally not enough hours in the day. But the nice thing about digital communications is as an alum, I can check the sports scores for my institution while I'm sitting and watching my child at swim practice. Necessity, 40% of visitors that are interacting with the website actually live out of state. If I live hundreds and hundreds of miles away, it makes it very difficult for me to come back and attend an event or interact with the gift officer on a regular basis. And so in large part, alumni who are engaging the institution from out of state have chosen an online relationship out of necessity. And the third would be enjoyment. So half of the visitors that Capture Higher Ed is tracking on institutions' websites graduated before 1985. So as you think of those empty nesters who now have a little bit more time on their hands, maybe they're retiring, maybe they're looking for what's next, they have a little bit more leisure time on their hands. And so we can talk about the enjoyment aspect of why alumni are choosing to engage the institution online. There's an added benefit to that enjoyment aspect where older alumni are engaging the institution. We know that capacity tends to congregate in older alumni. They just have had a longer time to build wealth. And so the major gift and the plan giving implications of older alumni coming back for enjoyment's sake provide great opportunities by using our digital communications to build those relationships that draw alumni closer, so that as we start to have those conversations, we know the right time to begin those conversations, and we also know that we have an existing relationship with this alum, so the phone call isn't out of the blue. But overall, we can talk about alumni choosing it in a relationship with the institution online because that's where we have trained them to go. Now, the reality is when we ask an alum to sign up for an event, we ask them to go online. When they look and they try to see what the volleyball score is, they go online. When they click a link in the e-newsletter, that landing page is online. So we're actually training our alumni to visit our website with frequency, and that's where we're driving our traffic. And so that's why our digital communications become a singular point and a singular opportunity to allow us to measure alumni engagement with the institution. And so let's talk about how are we measuring that relationship. You know, we oftentimes talk about affinity, and for a long time we've talked about affinity and talked about how do we measure affinity. and institutions have looked at, is an individual attending an event, or have they consistently been giving? Historical measures to better understand, is an alum engaged with the institution today? And so what we would like to propose, and we would like everyone to think about, is a new definition of affinity. So a definition of affinity can really be a mathematically derived score measuring the frequency, duration, and diversity of every alum's interaction with the institution today. Because we talked about digital channels are unique in the ability that these channels are where we are sending our alumni for just about every interaction they have with the institution. So when an alum reads an article, that tells us something about their affinity. When an alum registers for an event, that tells us something else about their affinity. When an alum researches a planned gift, looks up a professor, or when they make a gift online, all of those things tells us something about their affinity. And so by monitoring all of those activities, we're able to understand a true broad scope of an alum's relationship with the institution today. And by understanding their relationship with the institution today, we can understand how we can start to build that relationship and bring them closer to the institution. So let's talk about an opportunity and where are alum visiting. And so as we talk about engaging alumni online, there's a real opportunity in knowing that 80% of alumni visits are actually not on advancement pages. And so as we're displaying advancement messaging and we're trying to convey thank yous and different sorts of messages on the advancement site itself, we're actually missing 80% of alumni activities. And so what we're going to talk about today is how do we make our website smarter? How do we make our website into an actual solicitation channel? And how do we use our digital channels to deliver messaging where alumni are actually engaging the institution today? So what are relationships that build philanthropy? Well, relationships that build philanthropy at a very simple level are relationships where we're showing an alum that we have interest in the alum, not just the gift. We're showing the alum that we are listening to their interests, to their individual points of affinity, and we're delivering messaging and we're delivering communications that encourage meaningful interactions and that encourage repeat interactions. What you'll see later on is that we know that there's a direct correlation between the number of interactions that an alum has online and their likelihood to give. And so by developing the relationship, there's a direct correlation between the relationship that you're creating and then an increased likelihood to give through all other solicitation channels. We're also going to talk about the opportunity to educate alumni on the philanthropic process. So it may be that an alum comes to the website to research the basketball score, but because they're in a certain age demographic, we have an opportunity to talk to them about a planned gift. And so we can educate them on a planned gift, knowing simply that they meet that criteria. And then we'll talk about timing major and planned giving relationships by listening on the website to better understand which major gift prospects are actively engaging the institution and have a great relationship that we can leverage, and which prospects are visiting the planned giving page and digesting that information and using that planned giving page in a meaningful way. So we can reach out in a timely fashion there as well. So those relationships, as we talk about relationships building philanthropy, those relationships are really where we start to drive meaningful interactions that are not related to solicitations. They're related to us being a meaningful resource for alumni as they continue to engage with the institution. So how does that translate into donors and dollars? Well, we know that alumni affinity, as we talked about, is directly correlated to likelihood to give. But that same affinity is also directly correlated to an increase in average gift to the institution today in the annual fund, but also a 400% increase in lifetime giving. And so if that number sounds like a large number, I'd encourage you to think about if we could get an alum to give 10% more every year, that in and of itself becomes a meaningful amount. But if we get that alum to give a gift every single year because we have developed a relationship that drives philanthropy over the years, that alum then also has a relationship with the institution and is more likely to answer the phone when a major gift officer calls or when your planned giving officer calls. And then they're more likely to better understand their philanthropic opportunities to get involved in that way as well. And so that big bump at the end of an alum's life cycle, whether it's a major or planned gift, is really where we see a pretty significant increase in lifetime giving, and that's directly related to the relationship that we're developing through our digital channels. Now, we talked about educating on planned giving opportunities and allowing those alum to self-identify, but we also know that 80% of visitors looking at resources on the planned giving page have never been identified, or excuse me, have never been assigned. And so these alumni present a major opportunity to engage alumni who are actively looking at planned giving materials today and offer ourselves as a meaningful resource in developing that relationship when that alum is having that conversation in their household. So let's talk about what this looks like on a digital spectrum. So let's talk about showing interest in the alum. Now, what you see in front of you is an actual piece of communication that is delivered on the website to alumni visiting when, where, and how they choose. If you remember back to the reasons that alum are choosing an online relationship, it's really based on their time frame. And so being able to deliver the right message on the alum's time frame rather than on our solicitation calendar's time frame allows us to deliver a message that becomes engaging but not a solicitation. So in this example, we're asking alumni to share a memory about a president. Now, this is an actual communication that's taken from one of our partners. It is branded for Faux State because this is our demo institution. But in this example, this was a partner whose president was retiring. And we were monitoring the news page and noticed that the top 3 trending stories were related to the president's retirement. And so we knew that alumni were actively engaged with the messaging about the president's retirement. And so in real time, we were able to encourage alumni to share a memory about President O'Brien. And in that process, we allow them to include their contact information, which is then updated in the database. But more importantly, we're asking the alum for a relationship rather than asking the alum for a gift. And because the digital channel scales in real time, the cost of this is a fraction of the cost of if we were going to send out a mailer. And it happens in real time when alumni are engaging the institution. So this is the beginning of developing that relationship and asking the alum not for a gift, but asking the alum for meaningful interactions that we know are going to drive that philanthropy for years to come. But what else can that look like? You know, if we're not asking an alum to give us feedback, oftentimes it's really just a matter of showing alumni that we're paying attention. So when a young alumni come and visit your website, it's really important to show young alumni that we value them and we're paying attention to the impact that they're having. So what you see on the left-hand side of your screen is actually on-screen messaging that's delivered to young alumni, specifically when they come back to the website. So we can talk to young alumni about the impact that their $50 or that their $100 can have, and we start to build that relationship that we know will pay off. Now, on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll notice an invitation to the President's State of the University reception next week. And so we can start to show alumni that are in the local area, or maybe if the reception is in Naples, Florida, we can start to show those alumni that we're paying attention and that we know that you're in the local area or that we know that you're in the Naples, Florida area, and we would really value your attendance at this event. Again, it's showing alumni that we value their interaction more than we value just a simple gift. And so the opportunity to deliver that messaging in real time is what allows alumni to have a custom experience on all of your digital channels, shows the alum that we value them as an alum, it shows that we're paying attention, and it starts to develop that relationship. Where that relationship gets even stronger is with triggered communications based on alumni visiting your digital channels. So we talked about the importance of the website, but let's talk about e-communication plans. And so we know that alumni who receive custom content when they're online and then receive triggered follow-up, like what you see on the right-hand corner of your screen, are 44% more likely to return, and they return almost 30% sooner. And so the value there is, again, as we're developing those relationships, we're encouraging repeat meaningful interactions to drive that relationship further. And so what you see on the right-hand side of your screen is actually a triggered communication piece that results from a partner's e-communications newsletter. And so these stories have actually already been created for the e-newsletter, and we're identifying which stories are trending with our alumni population. And as alumni come and visit the website, we have a 72-hour delay, and we're triggering this communication that then encourages alumni to interact with our most meaningful content. And so we're sending messaging to alumni to say, we value you as an alum, and we would like you to continue to receive points of pride in our communications. So on-screen communications, triggered follow-up, creates that custom experience in a way that any other solicitation channel simply could not. Now, let's talk about changing the conversation a bit. So if you walk with us down the road that we have gone through the process of creating meaningful engagement with the alum while they're on screen and while they're engaging with the institution, and then we've triggered content that drives them back to the institution in a meaningful way. And we now have an alum who over the last 6 months has engaged with the institution 10, 11, 12, 20 times. We now have a relationship that we have monitored, we can mathematically describe, and then we can start to change the conversation. And we talked previously about changing the conversation and the ability to do donor education. And so what you see on your screen is the ability to change the conversation, to start talking to alumni, to start talking to parents about the best types of charitable gifts they can make. And so in this example, this is the best type of charitable gift you can make in 2018. But think about this communication landing on a page that can talk about opportunities for a charitable IRA rollover. It can talk about opportunities for major gifts. It can talk about campaign initiatives. Overall, it can educate alumni on types of charitable giving opportunities. It can educate alumni on charitable or on institutional priorities. There are a myriad of opportunities as we start to change the conversation based on alumni who we know have a meaningful relationship with the institution today. Now, as those gifts start to come in, there's also a meaningful opportunity to be able to demonstrate donor impact. And so what you see on your screen, there's a couple of parts blurred out because it is a thank you from a student. But what you see on your screen is the ability to deliver custom thank you messages to alumni as they return to the website, wherever they return, anywhere on the digital spectrum. We're able to thank them for their gift and then demonstrate that impact, which again becomes a touch point for us to be able to continue and further that relationship. Now, let's talk about timing the ask, because timing the ask can become a really important aspect of listening to alumni and better understanding their behaviors. Historically, communications and solicitations would arrive maybe calendar year end piece is in the mail right now relating to a calendar year end initiative that your institution has. Now, it might be that that piece is going to arrive at a wonderful time that the alum is going to be able to turn that gift around. But it might be that your communication piece is actually arriving at a time where the alum hasn't heard from the institution or doesn't have an existing relationship with the institution. And so what we would encourage you to think about is, how do we deliver a solicitation at the time when the relationship is right for the alumnus, not necessarily for the institution? And so what you see on your screen is the correlation between an alum's engagement online and their likelihood to give. So if we walk you through on the bottom of the screen, you'll see 1 to 12. That's the number of visits that an alum has online. And then you can see the corresponding participation rate with each one of those visits. So on the first visit, you can see participation jumps up to 45%. You can see on the 12th visit, participation jumps up to 83%. Now, the dotted line that you see through that chart is actually a mathematically drawn linear regression to show the correlation between alumni visiting online and the relationship that we're developing with alumni online and their likelihood to give. And so in this example, I would encourage you to think of the opportunity to deliver a solicitation maybe after the 3rd visit that an alum has. we're able to trigger an email communication that is a solicitation. Or maybe as we continue to drive that relationship, maybe we deliver a solicitation after that alum has their 6th visit, when they are 6 times more likely to give. Or maybe as we continue to drive that relationship, we start to deliver messaging on the 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th visit, when an alum is 7 times more likely to give than the average alum. And in this case, in the annual giving space, we're now delivering solicitations on the alum's time frame based on the relationship that we have developed with this alum online, and rather than simply a metric that we have in the solicitation calendar. So as we talk about monitoring alumni activity and delivering messaging and developing relationships and timing the ask based on the alum's relationship, it's really important that we talk about an opportunity to go beyond click-through rates. So hopefully most of you are looking at click-through rates in your CRM and who is actually clicking through an email. What I'd like you to think about is what happens to an alum after they click through that email. So what you see on your screen is that adding alumni tracking actually captures 90% more leads and insights. And if that sounds like a big number, I'd encourage you to think about an alum who clicks through your e-communications, and maybe that lands them on the e-newsletter website, and they read an article from the e-newsletter. And once they read that article, we've captured 100% of their activity because that's the one page that they visited. But then that alum says, I wonder how the volleyball team is doing, and they click over to the volleyball team's website. Well, now that second interaction has actually not been tracked. And so now that alum has actually had 50% more interactions than a click-through rate alone would track. Now, if that alum then says, I wonder what happened to old Professor McGee over in the communications department who I loved, I'm going to click over there to see what he's up to. That alum clicks a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th time, and you can very quickly see how a click-through rate alone can start to capture only 25, 10%, 5%, depending upon how active the alum is. And so as we talk about delivering communications based on an alum's relationship, I'd encourage you to think about the more interactions that we're able to monitor and that you're able to monitor, the more accurate your solicitations will be based on the relationship that you're developing with these alumni. And a great example of that actually comes from the plan giving page. And so the activity that you see in front of you is an actual activity from a visitor to a partner's plan giving page. And you can see on the first day, this alum actually clicked through an email, and that drove that alum to the plan giving page, where they spent about 10 minutes looking at the plan giving page. But then over the next about 3 weeks, that alum went back to the website 3 different times to research student scholarships. Now take note that those are organic visits, so those are not click-throughs on an email. Those are organic visits that a click-through would have missed. Then on day number 25, so that's about a month later, that alum returns for a 4th time organically and downloads multiple pieces from the plan giving website about leaving the institution in their estate plan. And then on day 30, that alum returns another time to research a charitable IRA rollover. Now, in this example, these behaviors would suggest that this alum has a very strong relationship with the institution, given the organic interest that the alum has shown in a planned gift. And I would encourage you to note that on day 1, that click-through would have been noted by any sort of click-through tracking that you're doing. But the following 5 interactions are really where we start to get a visibility to where an alum's relationship is with the institution, and then create actionable insights with that. And with that information, we're able to time the plan giving relationship more appropriately. Let's talk about timing the major gift relationship. So as we're listening online, we're able to identify high capacity alumni who are responding to our e-communications, who are clicking through on our emails, who are registering for events, who are showing all of those classic signs of affinity, who are responding to the relationship that we've worked on developing over the last month, 2 months, 6 months, 10 months, and which alumni are responding most effectively to that. And so it's taking the information from the website and delivering it to a major gift officer or delivering it to a planned giving officer in a way that they're able to digest that information and reach out in an actionable type format that really allows us to time the planned giving relationship. And so what you see in front of you is common in the marketing automation space. This particular example is from Capture Higher Ed, and it's a synopsis of all of the activity that happens on the institution's website a night before. I use myself as an example, but all of the metrics that you see here are metrics that an institution is able to report on and review in real time every morning based on alumni visiting the institution's website the night before. So as a major gift officer, I can very quickly understand that an affinity index, I'm going to ask everyone to look at the affinity index, which is that mathematical measurement of all the activity that an alum had in the entire time we've been tracking them. We know that this particular alum's affinity is a 77 out of 100. We know from the existing capacity information within the institution's database that this alum is expected to be able to give to up to $50,000. We can very quickly understand that they had an MBA, they do not have a planned gift documented, and we can start to make the decision on, is this the right time to reach out to this individual? In this case, I would suggest that this is a great time to reach out to this individual, knowing that they have both high capacity and high affinity, and that they were engaged with the institution yesterday. So at a very high level, it's taking the information from your digital communications and delivering meaningful relationships and meaningful messaging to alumni that encourages repeat interactions, that sort of builds on itself to then help us identify which alumni have an existing relationship with the institution, further that relationship, and then deliver that information in a way that we can help drive philanthropy. It's showing interest in the donor, not just the checkbook. It's encouraging those repeat interactions. It's encouraging alumni to better educate themselves on the philanthropic process. We live in this environment every day, but it may be that an alum hasn't considered a planned gift before. And how can we be a meaningful resource to those alum as they visit our institution on the digital spectrum? How can we help educate them on planned giving opportunities? How can we help educate them on professorships and scholarships, things that we live in every day, but that alumni just don't have on their radar currently? So with that, I would, Emma, I'm going to open it up for questions, but I would just encourage everyone to think about how can we use our existing digital channels to help scale the relationship rather than the solicitation? Because a lot of the work that we're doing here at Capture Higher Ed is related to driving relationships, because we know that the end result of that is philanthropy for years to come. So we hope this has been beneficial. Emma, I'm happy to answer any questions and very appreciative of everyone's time today.
Okay, well, actually, Kevin, we do have a couple of questions for you that the audience has asked of us today. And of course, if you have any, we do have the next 5 to 10 minutes to answer any questions you may have. So feel free to use that chat log at the bottom of your control panel today and ask away. And I will get started with the first one. Are you ready, Kevin?
Yes, please.
Do you have an example of the impact that these strategies that you have discussed today can have in the annual giving space?
Certainly. Well, thank you for that question. One of the really exciting opportunities in the annual giving space is actually identifying alumni who do not have a relationship with the institution. Because if an alum doesn't have a relationship with the institution, then when our direct mail piece or when our student caller makes that call, they are infinitely less likely to have a positive outcome. And so we've been working with an institution for about a year now, and in January we noticed that young alumni were engaging with the institution's communications at about a 1% rate. So they were clicking through, reading articles, they were registering for events, all of those things were happening at about a 1% rate. Where we noticed that older alumni were very actively engaged with the messaging. And so we partnered with the institution to better understand the communication strategy that was on campus and start to develop communications that started to build young alumni relationships. Now, they weren't solicitations, but they were genuinely focused on building young alumni relationships. And so, in developing those communications over the last year or so, that particular institution has been able to take young alumni engagement online from about 1% to a little bit over 10%. And a third of those relationships have given in either fiscal year 18 or fiscal year 19. And so it's been quite a success story for us in being able to take young alumni engagement from 1% to about 10%. And then those relationships have actually translated into philanthropy at about a 30% rate for young alumni. So I hope I'm answering your question. If not, please follow up with me afterwards. I'd be happy to elaborate further.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And on to the next one. Now, the next question we have is, how can a university identify which visitors on their website are actually alumni versus maybe a prospective student, friend, random visitor, etc.?
Yeah, so I love that. So with marketing automation, for the person asking that question, marketing automation is the technology to identify visitors to your website. I'll speak specifically about capture behavioral engagement because it's certainly where I'm most comfortable. But marketing automation gives you the ability to identify alumni as they click through emails. So with your e-communications plan, we basically create an intelligent e-communications plan where alumni, as they click through your emails, we're able to identify alumni at that point and then track their behavior going forward. And so the real key in answering your question is using marketing automation to get alumni to click through emails, or if you remember back to the form that we displayed earlier, where we encouraged alumni to share their favorite memory of the president. When they enter their first name, their last name, and their email address, along with the feedback that we're looking for, through that process, we're able to identify alumni visiting the website. So anytime an alum fills out a form online, that's an identification opportunity as well. So it's really through your e-communications and through form fills online that we're able to identify alumni populations. Now, the question also asked about students. The same opportunity exists in the enrollment space. So for anybody who's tuning in today who also wears a hat in the enrollment space, know that Capture, actually, we got our start in the enrollment space, monitoring student behavior and focusing marketing resources in that space as well. So great question. Both are very active population on an institution's websites and very much benefit from being tracked.
Yeah, okay. And I actually have, just based off time today, one last question, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up after that. But the question actually pertains to your slide, Kevin, timing the Ask Annual Giving slide. And a member of our audience was just wondering where that data came from. The one that I talked about, I believe it was participation rate.
Yes, I'm happy to navigate back to it. So this is actually a Capture study that was released just a few months back. I'm thinking back, maybe that would go back to March or April. But all of this information can be found on Capture's website. But this is an aggregation of all the alumni activity that Capture tracks for partners. And so in identifying individual alumni, we then aggregate all of that information and analyze it based on visitor behavior. And that's where that information comes from. And again, the line that you see there is a mathematically drawn linear regression. So that actually documents the direct correlation between the data, and it's not just a dotted line that we thought would look pretty and good going through that chart.
But it looks so pretty, though, Kevin.
Well, it's a good line. So it really does do a great job of demonstrating the value of developing relationships, because we know that timing the ask based on the alum's relationship can really start to produce a more favorable outcome than timing the ask based on a solicitation calendar alone.
Oh, okay. And sorry to the audience if you heard a dog barking in the background. We actually have some pups here in the office today, so I want to go ahead and apologize for that. But Kevin, I do actually have one last question that came in, and that question would be any recommendations for CRM platforms to pair with a marketing automation system?
Wow, so I love that question. So there's a lot of great options out there. One of the great things about Capture Behavioral Engagement is that we engage with all types of CRMs. And so if you're exploring, we hear Salesforce and Razor's Edge, iModules. We certainly don't endorse sort of any particular CRM over another one, but those would be common names that we hear. But the nice thing about marketing automation, and specifically with Capture Behavioral Engagement, is it is designed to overlay with your existing system. And so as you adopt a marketing automation strategy, know that it really should fit seamlessly with your existing systems on campus. It shouldn't require you to change what you're doing or change your email vendors or change your CRM specifically for marketing automation. So if you're thinking about a CRM change simply to get marketing automation, I would love to have that conversation. But if you are looking at a CRM change in general, there certainly are some common names that we hear in the industry.
Okay, well, Kevin, that looks. Oh.
Yep. Sorry, I'm going to have one more thing.
That's all.
As you think about your CRM and marketing automation, I would also encourage you to think about how many pages that CRM can track, and can that CRM track on pages that are not created through that CRM. So a great example would be if the CRM is developing pages in the advancement space, can that CRM also track activity on the College of Business page that may not be created in that CRM? And that's really important because we know that 80% of alumni activities are actually on non-advancement pages. And so if we're only using marketing automation to track and deliver messaging on advancement pages, we're actually going to miss 80% of alumni activity. So as you're having those conversations on campus, I'd encourage you to think through that capability as well. All right, Emma, I really am done this time.
I was about to say, I'm glad I didn't cut you off because you had a lot to contribute right there. So anyways, we are officially done for the day. I want to go ahead and thank everyone for attending our session. We really appreciate you spending your time to be here with us today, and I hope that you learned more about alumni relationships that drive participation. And just a little follow-up before I give it back to Kevin to close out. Everyone that attended the webinar today or who registered will receive a follow-up email with the presentation slides and a link to the recording too. And just expect to see that either by the end of this week or the beginning of next week. And with that, I will pass the torch back to Kevin and say thank you once again.
Emma, you have been a wonderful host, so thank you so much for all of your help today. And I'll just simply wrap up by saying I hope today that everyone found some value in what was presented on building relationships. And we hope that the conversations on campus are starting to focus on how do we use our digital communication channels as a new channel. And it's not a stagnant piece of information that we have when we put information out on our website, that website can become an interactive solicitation channel. It can become a way to drive relationships, and it can be a way to identify new opportunities for our major and planned giving officers. So hopefully you're starting to revise solicitation channels to include marketing automation, as many of your peers are, and you're starting to revise solicitation calendars to include strategies much like what you saw today, and you can take advantage of some of the strategies that you've seen. So with that, I will say thank you on behalf of all of us at Capture Higher Ed for giving us a little bit more than a half hour today, and we certainly hope to see you at future webinars. Thank you so much.